Please note that I am not a financial advisor. I'm not qualified to be a financial advisor. The XX Network is a sponsor of the show. Therefore, I have a bias towards the XX Network. Obstacles are things a person sees when he takes his eye off his goal. This is Robert Goldstein. He's the Chief Operating Officer at BlackRock.
Thing is, one of the things that we were carefully observing is where we are with regard to regulation. Mm-hmm. And when Ukraine-Russia happened, which obviously is a terrible tragedy, an incredible event for the world, but importantly, it also has a lot to do with digital assets in terms of it was an unprecedented sanctions regime. Mm-hmm. And clearly the concept of understanding how to manage money, the SWIFT payment network, all of those items wound up being front of mind across the whole discussion.
The prime opportunity to ban digital assets has already happened. When the USA sanctioned Russia, they could have easily sanctioned crypto as well, but they didn't. The COO of BlackRock is telling you that they looked at this event as a positive for crypto at large. They're leaning in. BlackRock, if you're unaware, is the largest asset manager in the world. They control over $10 trillion in assets. That's larger than most nations.
And what we observed is, as that was happening, it would have been a prime time for governments to choose to really lock down on digital assets. Mm-hmm. And if anything, it seemed to be catalytic towards governments looking to regulate and have smart regulation associated with digital assets. And that really got us excited about the resilience and persistence of this as an asset class.
Sanctioning Russia was the prime opportunity to clamp down on digital assets. However, that didn't happen. Rather, it was a catalyst for smart regulations.
And as we thought about our strategy, we as a company, we've launched a Bitcoin trust. We as a company have done a variety of things with regard to a relationship that we have with Coinbase and how we've taken our Aladdin platform and connected it with the Coinbase platform. Obviously, our relationship with Circle. One of the things I would observe is obviously a lot of energy among this audience is thought of, a lot of brain cells go into thinking about digital assets and USDC. Mm-hmm. But in reality, cash and how cash moves around, even for an organization like BlackRock in the institutional land, there's great inefficiencies. Yeah. There's great inefficiencies even in today's world. You wouldn't think in 2023 there were great inefficiencies, but we see incredible opportunity for something like Circle, USDC, and those use cases to actually attack those inefficiencies.
BlackRock is interested in crypto for its efficiencies. Goldstein says the reason they partner with Circle is because domestically moving dollars from one platform to the next has to go through traditional rails. But while using USDC, they can make settlement instantaneously. They also integrated Aladdin into Coinbase, meaning the most sophisticated AI platform has accessibility to crypto assets on Coinbase. This means that their clients have accessibility to Coinbase assets. And we're talking about mega whales, the sovereign wealth funds, the guys that can move markets with 1% of their portfolio. What is clear is Goldstein is focused on real-world benefits that crypto has to offer. The utility.
And so when people ask me the question, why did you join the board of Ripple? I joined the board of Ripple because XRP serves a purpose. It's a function that facilitates cross-border payments. It's not some store of value, kind of arbitrary value that is not pegged to anything.
USDC offers domestic settlement. XRP can convert money to any other fiat currency. When XRP is regulated and BlackRock needs to get money to another part of the world, what will they use? So far, Circle has a euro and dollar stablecoin, but that only works domestically. If BlackRock wants to invest in something in Singapore or Malaysia, how will they convert their US dollars to the local currency? I've uncovered CEOs like Fidelity, Bain Capital, Franklin Templeton, and they're all singing the same tune. It's not about a store of value. It's about utility.
And when I was going to sign the receipt or the electronic thing, it asked me, do I want to pay in euro or dollar?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, dollar. Then I looked at it. I'm still being charged at 3%.
Terrible.
Okay? So, and when you think about all the people who send money, they may work in one country, send money back home. They generally do that through organizations that charge 5 to 10%. Yeah. There is a need, whether it's a Libra or something else, to democratize the exchange of foreign currencies. Today, with computers and electronic market,
there shouldn't be that.
It should be 10 basis points, 5 basis points.
That
it's not
sense.
percent. And so I actually believe the idea around Libra, I don't think we need to create a new currency, but the technology to instantaneous calibrate all the currencies, that should be done.
Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, is describing XRP's use case. In 2019, Robbie Mitchnick was a Ripple executive that was hired to lead BlackRock's digital asset strategy.
We see opportunities for different blockchain technologies to help with regard to some of the operating inefficiencies we have within our ecosystem. And importantly, as we look forward, we think there's a lot of opportunity for tokenization broadly in the capital markets. And there are great opportunities where there are things that take days that shouldn't take days. There are great opportunities, in my opinion. A lot of the world runs on legacy infrastructure. And everyone talks about, this concept of, can you believe that? Changing legacy infrastructure is really hard. And the reality is, at some point, it needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think with regard to tokenization in particular, as this legacy infrastructure ultimately needs to be replaced, it shouldn't be replaced like for like. It should be replaced in certain circumstances with new operating models.
Yeah.
He says ultimately this is going to happen. He says we shouldn't replace like for like. We should have a new operating model. Swift GPI and Swift Go is an example of being done like for like. There needs to be a whole new operating model, and it's going to happen. Craig Phillips, that was former BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, and counsel to the U.S. Treasury, has also joined the board of Ripple.
One of the major events in Bitcoin's prehistory, any of the earliest examples, is eCash, created by David Chaum in 1982. eCash was a digital currency that used encryption to ensure anonymity and security for transactions.
David Chaum's contributions to cryptography and his early work on eCash were inspirations for Satoshi's vision of Bitcoin. Chaum has been a pioneer in cryptography and is now working with the XX network. He's addressing concerns like quantum resistance, privacy, and scalability. The XX network is a decentralized protocol with node runners from all over the globe. There are now 50-plus countries that host nodes. On February 28th, CoinW is listing XX.
Countries, So when you look at this world of digital money, on the side of CBDCs, the biggest issue is interoperability. Can different platforms allow us to still go with cross-border payments? And most recently, India and Singapore agreed on that kind of cross-border payment. So this is a very important place for policies to come to work.
From the policy side, cross-border payments are at the forefront. We've watched walled gardens being developed, and there needs to be interoperability between technologies. This is where crypto assets fit in. They're neutral protocols that bridge the gap. Rosie Rios was recently at an Indian conference in front of politicians and central bankers talking about XRP. We know Singapore has tested Ripple, and now there is some type of agreement between Singapore and India for cross-border payments.
To your points, to a large degree, what's really interesting about the technology component of it is that every one of the ecosystem players, I shouldn't say everyone, most of the ecosystem players have built in some way their own technology that if you looked at it, you could argue is their own smart contract technology.
Right.
The problem is none of them talk to each other.
Right.
So most of the brain cells that get destroyed are trying to translate between A, B, C, D, who are all required for the contract in some way to work, all with their own technologies that they've created to in some way keep track of the same thing.
Exactly.
And there's no question that even when you look, going back to cash, which you would think in many regards that would be like the most basic thing, even there, the complexity of that is tremendous. So we're super excited about the opportunity set ahead, but we also believe that it's going to be a series of evolutions that in aggregate equal revolution, as opposed to the other way around.
Years of development has occurred. These large players are behind the scenes building private and permissioned systems like JPM, Onyx, R3 Corda, Hyperledger. But those technologies aren't able to talk to one another. Crypto assets are going to bridge these walled gardens together.
In fact, at the IMF, we have already defined 9 areas that are related to macro, financial, legal, and cross-border issues that define the work that is already being done and what more has to be done. So I'm very mindful that we have no time to waste, that if anything, we have to run faster in this area. So you will see at the next G20 meeting a very substantive discussion on this topic.
Kristalina, the head of the IMF, says that there's no time to waste. We need to have crypto asset regulations. The IMF has already came up with a framework, and she says to expect news at the next G20 meeting. I listened to the entire interview, and she said the very last option should be a ban, which later news outlets came out and said that she was talking about a ban, but that was false information. She talked about systemic risk and consumer safety with stablecoins. Reuters took everything out of context in the article, so why are they reporting out of context information? Is it just for clicks and likes? Is that the reason why they're reporting false information?
Giving a good sense as to how exactly transactions are going to be done and monitored in a world in which, as you said, this is not a tangible. This is not like a note that you can hold in your hand. But it doesn't mean that it has to be left to be a wild west. We do have to have principles and regulatory frameworks in place, and so we are now being charged, the Financial Stability Board, IMF, Bank for International Settlement, to work on these frameworks.
The frauds and scams will be regulated, but the ones left standing will have the advantage, the good actors.
Well, in terms of, yes, cryptocurrencies need to be regulated. It is obvious now that it is necessary. Certainly aspects of consumer investment protection is very important.
Augustin Carstens was also reported saying that there was a ban, but that's not what he says. He says we need to have smart regulations.
What we want is to lay the ground, the infrastructure for a modern financial system. Now, the technology is moving very fast. We have a very solid foundation. So the idea is basically to use that solid foundation, incorporate the new technologies, and facilitate the development of a future financial system.
What gaps in particular are you trying to fill?
Well, one, of course, is that financial system, as efficient as it is today, is still full of transaction costs.
A financial crisis is underway. By ridding the system of fees and friction, we will see an economic boost. Crypto assets have the potential of breathing life into the economy at large. The regulations are coming, and when we can free lock capital that is reserved for settlement time, we will greatly enhance our economy. It's about this utility. A new financial system is coming. The greatest power is often simple patience. Thanks guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you enjoy content like this, please consider joining my Patreon or my website that accepts Stripe.